All right, so welcome back to The Wandering Naturalist. So in our last episode, we got to talk to some staff in natural resources about managing deer populations. And it really is a balanced and coordinated effort between both wildlife and forestry to ensure our restoration efforts, whether it's in the woods or with populations itself of other animals and the deer, keeping them healthy, is all about that balance. So we do deer surveys, we have park hunts. And so to shed a little bit more light on some of these park hunts, we have some guests with us today.
Yes. We said in the beginning that we are kind of pro hunting when it comes to management. And in reality, some of our best conservationists were hunters because being out and hunting is what exposed them to nature, made them realize the value of it. And they also observed with their own eyes the changes that happened. We quoted Allo Leopold, and it was his hunting experiences that made him realize how important predators were to a natural environment. Teddy Roosevelt, one of the greatest conservationists in American history, he was a huge hunter. And it's from his experience of hunting out all the predators to create a reserve just for mule deer that we learned how devastating it can be if you have deer with no predators and no hunting. So hunting has played an important role in conservation, but we're finding that less and less youth are getting involved in hunting nowadays, and it's because there's a lot of barriers to it. I know I would be interested in hunting, as I said, because
we
I feel like I
want to go hunting.
Yeah, if I'm going to tell people it's a good thing, I feel like I should experience it, but I didn't grow up with it. And because I didn't grow up with it, I don't have my gun license permit. I don't know where I can go hunting. I don't know how much financial burden there is to hunting. I don't even really know where do I put my deer stand. And so when you don't have that experience as a youth, there's this huge kind of mountain that can keep you away from it. And I think that's helping to cause this decline as we get more and more urbanized. But the Park District is trying to address this to create future conservationists through hunting programs. And so we're going to talk to Bill Vollbrecht, who is our Gulf Maintenance Supervisor at Eagle Lake, and Ryan Barth, who's a supervisor at Baker Near Wilderness Settlement. And they're both involved with park hunts and programs that engage youth in the outdoors. So I want to thank you both for coming here today.
Yeah, thanks. Great to be here.
Thank you very much.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourselves?
So my name's Ryan, and I work at the Baker Near Wilderness Settlement. I got the greatest job in the world because I get to teach kids about the outdoors, archery, canoeing, rock climbing, and hunting. So I'm an avid outdoorsman and hunter myself. So when you get to do that for a profession, it's a great thing.
Very good. And again, my name is Bill Vollbrecht. I'm a Gulf Maintenance Supervisor for the Park District at Eagle Lake and Glen Lake. I've been here for 40 years in the Park District, 35 years of full-time employment and 5 years of seasonal employment before that. Actually started out at the district nursery where you just spoke with Sean and that. And so I was in NRM for the first 20 years of my career, and now again on the golf side, the turf side of it. And I have just been fortunate enough to be brought up in an atmosphere of hunting and so forth and that. But and now have a chance through Ryan and the programs the Park District provides to be part of that and extend out, reach out to maybe others that can't. So it's been just a wonderful opportunity and experience.
So can you touch a little bit on, because I don't know that we've mentioned Baker Near Wilderness Settlement in some of our previous podcasts. So can you touch a little bit on what that is and what it offers?
Yeah, the Baker Near Wilderness Settlement is an education facility within Three Rivers Park District. We're located right in the center of Baker Park. And what makes us unique, or one of the unique features, is we have overnight facilities. So we have 8 log cabins where groups can stay overnight and have an overnight outdoor education experience. And then we have a beautiful lodge for meals and for outdoor programming. So it's a great residential center in the center of Baker Park. And we focus on outdoor recreation and nature-based programming. And one niche that we have that's unique is we have a really strong conservation education programming where we teach firearm safety to kids in an outdoor park setting, usually in like a summer camp format. So kids can come to the Baker Near Wilderness Settlement, do a week of summer camp, earn their DNR firearm safety, plus do the fun stuff like rock climbing and canoeing and swimming and campfires and those kind of things. So that niche has really been a great program for us.
So why do you feel like it's important to expose these students to that firearm safety? And it's usually firearms like shotguns to help them with hunting, correct?
Absolutely. I am a big proponent of education when it comes to firearms. So I think at that 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old age is a great time, or is the time to teach kids how to be safe with firearms. And one thing I'd like to say is I think people might have a misperception of what firearm safety education is. Yes, we do talk about how to be safe with a firearm. That's a big emphasis and those kind of things. But we also talk a lot about wildlife management and ethics. Hunters, like Brandon said earlier, are your earliest conservationists who put a lot of time and money into public lands and habitat management. So we do talk about that as well. And I think it's really important to get kids a good, solid foundation when they're young so they become an ethical, safe hunter.
Yeah, and I was doing some research just to see what the kind of current state of hunting is in Minnesota. And there seems to be that there is this trend of things declining. And again, it's mostly being in youth. A lot of these people were brought up into it, and we're seeing that less and less. I think I read something that Minnesota is tied second with Wyoming in national rankings for having 34% of its population active in both hunting and fishing. So hunting license sales have been steady at more than about 50,000 a year. But the culture is weakening, as Brandon was mentioning, and dramatically when you consider that it has not kept pace with how our population is growing. So I think that's where people are like, oh, well, the number's staying the same, but our population is growing. And you're seeing more and more young and youth enthralled with electronic devices and not going somewhere like big or near wilderness to get that experience.
Absolutely. We're definitely seeing the flattening trend of license sales, but Minnesota's population at the same time is growing. So as an overall percentage of the population, hunting is going down. And I think Brandon bring up some really good points in his kind of introductory remarks about the barriers to get into hunting. There's a number of things. If you don't grow up in a family that has that tradition, there's the barrier of where am I going to hunt? Where's the land?
Yeah.
There's the barrier of how do I use a gun if I've never been trained in that? There's a barrier if I'm 12, 13, 14. How do I get there? Who takes me? So there are a lot of barriers to hunting, and that's one of the things I'm most proud of is we're trying to address some of those barriers in our programs.
So, Bill, how did you get involved with this? Because you're at golf now, so I'm trying to connect. How did that happen?
Do you go hunting with golf balls?
Yeah. Well, so
That's a really mean 9-iron.
Yeah. So ironically, again, when I grew up, obviously in a time when there was a lot more land accessible, there maybe wasn't as many barriers. I grew up kind of in a rural community where you could simply go ask anyone to go hunt, and usually you were able to do that. And you could, go sight in guns, shoot guns. There was just many more opportunities. Nowadays, it's very more limited. Actually, when I grew up, my dad was not a hunter, and so, but my best friend growing up in high school, his dad and the group, they took me in, kind of under their wing, if you will, and my friend's dad would always joke about this. He took little Billy by his hand out in the woods the first time, he gave me a gun, gave me shells, gave me all the gear, the cold weather gear that you need for a typical Minnesota deer hunt and that. Helped me find a deer stand, and as luck would have it, the very first year I shot the biggest buck of my life up till last year. I mean, 40 years of
what
hunting.
An experience.
And so that really paved the path for me. And fortunately, we have 2 children in our family. Both our children I brought up in, taking them out hunting. Our daughter Haley, the younger of our 2, she was actually involved in both of Ryan's camps, the Forkhorn 1 and Forkhorn 2 camp, where she got her firearm safety and also her archery permit as well, in that advanced hunter education.
So then do you help the students get permits for hunting through those programs?
So they earn what's called their firearm safety certificate.
Okay.
And you need to have a certificate before you can buy a hunting license. So it's kind of like before you can get your driver's license, you got to have a permit. Mm-hmm. This is kind of the equivalent to firearm safety. So we have 8 summer camps where kids can go through the camp and earn that certificate.
And then it gets rid of that barrier of, how do I get my permit?
Absolutely. That's one of the barriers, yeah.
Okay.
And so I'm guessing for these hunts, you have mentors. And so this is where someone like Bill comes into play, that they volunteer essentially for this?
Absolutely. I've been just really fortunate, and we have some just wonderful people within Three Rivers Park District and within other organizations like the Minnesota Deer Hunters Association, where we have mentors who volunteer their time. A lot of the times they even give out gear, like warm weather gear, borrowing a gun, because sometimes not having a gun is a barrier. And these mentors just do a fabulous job helping the youth. And one of the things we really try to promote is we want to be there for the hunt, the hunt, and the post-hunt. And what I mean by that is we want mentors who teach them, why do we hunt here? Why do we put our stand here? What's the reason? How do you put a stand up? Why do you wear a safety harness? All those pre-information things. Then we're there literally side by side. Bill sits side by side in a double stand with his youth, helps make any decisions, safety decisions, or when is it a good time to shoot type decisions. So we're there during the hunt, and if we're fortunate enough to harvest a deer, Bill would be there to help with that process too. And then as far as the post-hunt, we're there to help them with the processing of the meat and making sure that that's used. And a lot of times the mentors go above and beyond and do little photo albums, or even maybe mount the antlers if they shoot a deer. So yeah, I have a really good network of mentors.
And like, how are the kids responding to this? I'm sure that's got to be a really rewarding experience.
It is awesome. I think I've been in this field for about 20 years, and it's the deepest and probably best program I've ever been involved with. I get more hugs from moms after this weekend than I've gotten at any other nature program that I've led. And I think the reason is it's the depth. So the kid spends a week with us at summer camp, spends a couple meetings with us preparing for hunt, and spends a whole weekend with us. So we probably have 8 to 10 days of touch point with this person. So there's a relationship, there's depth, and they get to do something that's pretty unique. They get to hunt in a park with an experienced mentor. It's a pretty amazing experience, and it's basically free too, because we really want to get those kids involved.
Well, and it's helping us in wildlife management to work towards that population control. So imagine just knowing that they're a part of that management tool is kind of a big deal for, especially at that age. And this is done at Lake Rebecca?
Absolutely. So we actually, part of the neat thing about this hunt is we stay overnight in the log cabins at the Baker Near Wilderness Settlement. And what's important about that is that camaraderie that goes with a hunt. And I think people don't realize how important that camaraderie and that shared experience is.
The deer camp experience.
Yeah, the deer camp experience. So we have the cabins, and they got wood stoves, so they're making a wood fire. They got a lantern for their light source. Then the lodge turns into the place where we have coffee and food, and we share stories. So that's an important supportive element, is that the deer camp element. And then we hunt, which is about 10 miles west of Baker Park is Lake Rebecca Park. And we're able to hunt that park. It's a little bit more rural of a park, so it's a little easier to close down some of the areas so we can safely hunt that park.
Can I ask a little bit about the ethics? Because you said that you teach the ethics to the students, very important. I think with deer hunting, again, we can get a lot of emotions involved in it. We have a lot of people who care very strongly for animals, and they point out, rightly so, that our population is getting bigger, and so we're losing habitat, and so our solution then is to go and hunt these animals and kill them. And where are the ethics in that? How do we address the ethics of teaching students ethics of hunting versus the ethics of, well, we're going out and we're killing this animal because we want the space, or because we've taken away habitat, or we just want to eat it? Do you know what I'm saying?
I do, and I think it's a really good question, and I don't think we talk about it enough. It is a big deal to kill something, so we need to talk about that, and we need to go through the emotions of that. And I think one thing that people don't realize, for people like myself and Bill, we love deer. I love deer. I think about deer a lot, but I also hunt them, and I end up shooting a couple deer per year. It doesn't mean I don't love them, and I am definitely a supporter of deer and management and habitat and those kind of things. And as far as ethics, the things that we really talk about is so if we're going to shoot something, we want to make sure we make a quick, clean kill. We want to make sure we're doing it in the best, most responsible manner. So when Bill's sitting in the stand with a youth, we're not just going to shoot the first time we see a deer. We're going to wait till we have a good, clean shot. We're going to make sure we can hit it in an area that'll make a quick, clean kill. There's also ethics around, whether you have a doe permit or a buck permit. You got to make sure you're clearly identifying that you're shooting the right animal. There's ethics about like leave no trace. We want to make sure we're not, littering.
Garbage.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing's worse than
cutting unnecessarily.
Absolutely. Nothing's worse than going to a wildlife management area and seeing garbage or trash. So we want to instill that ethic of, we're going to leave the place better than we found it. We're going to make sure we do everything in our power to make sure we do this ethically, and if it's not there, we just won't shoot. It's just part of that thing. And if we instill that at that 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, I think that ethic really starts to grow.
One of the objections getting brought up versus hunting is, well, why don't we live trap, or why don't we do birth control? And I know I've worked at parks where they had tried doing live trapping, and what they found is that the stress level caused by that is just incredible for the deer.
It's traumatic.
Like we can measure the stress hormones in a deer that's been hunted versus a deer that's been live trapped, and the deer that's been hunted doesn't have those stress levels that a live trapped deer does. And when you transport it somewhere else, studies have shown that deer is just going to die anyway. So it's going to go through a very high level of stress only to die anyway, as opposed to being a food source for somebody. And I know of people who are vegetarian and vegan who hunt and then donate that to food shelves so the food doesn't go to waste. And then in terms of using birth control, studies have shown that, well, that doesn't work either. And then there's also concern of, well, what if it's an area where we have predators that might have limited population and the birth control can get transferred to them and reduce their population. So it has a much broader impact too when we do some of these other techniques than just hunting does. So in a lot of ways, doing those clean shots like you teach the students to do is the most ethical way to hunt the deer or to control the deer population. And it's ethical to control the deer population because we created the mess of getting rid of the predators that would normally manage their population. And if we have overpopulated deer, well, then we end up with disease and with starvation and with all of these other things that increase the stress that they're going to feel. So in terms of quality of life for the deer, hunting provides the best quality of life for them.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I think it sounds like a weird paradox that actually hunting actually helps the animal, but it actually does, keeping the population in check. And it really boils down to habitat. Everything boils down to habitat. We need to have enough habitat for food, water, and shelter for the population to be healthy. And so keeping that number under carrying capacity, and study after study has shown that hunting is the most effective way to do it. And I think there's a side benefit of the recreational opportunity that can provide at the same time as managing.
Well, it's a big economy boost. You look at the spending that is done in regards to hunting, and I had some numbers because, again, this stuff just kind of blows your mind because people will think, yeah, it's good for the deer, but it's also really good for a lot of other conservation efforts within the state. A lot of the money generated from hunting for licenses, the gear, just the tourism that it brings to Minnesota and to some of these companies that this is their livelihood. So this was a 2016 news release from Minnesota DNR. Hunting-related expenditures in the state totaled $725 million. Hunters spend about $400 million on equipment and $90 million on other hunting supplies.
I think an interesting thing with that too is there's also the taxes, the Pittman-Robertson taxes
that go into
conservation. I think one thing I don't think everyone realizes, but public land management is primarily, it's over 80% of the funding comes from hunting licenses and from the Pittman-Robertson tax on
and that's firearms and ammo. So that was passed. That's the Federal Aid and Wildlife Restoration Act, and that was approved by Congress in 1937.
There you go.
So you read my mind. You were right on top of what I was going to mention next. But I think, too, this community that it brings, like it really stirs something in people having these memories from a young age, like Bill mentioned. And so I think it's also interesting because we have park hunts that Stephen mentioned that we do through the Metro Bow Hunter Resource Base.
Yes.
Oh, I got it right. MBRB.
Very
and
good.
You participate in those, correct, Bill?
I have. Well, actually, this last year was the first year that I did participate. Been aware of it for a long time, but this year I did take part.
Can you explain a little bit what it is for those that don't know what MBRB is?
So again, it's an organization outside of the Park District that they set their base of hunters. They gather this group up. All the resources in that, and they take on the hunt, if you will. They take on the responsibility. They set up the hunt, make all the arrangements and so forth and that, and grab this group of people to come in and do this deer management wherever the area might be. Obviously, the Park District is one area, but many municipalities around the suburbs here utilize and the MBRB process or association in that. Again, they do a great job. Again, this was my first year. I think as a hunter, I went into it with mixed emotions. It's like, well, you're out there with this group of hunters. The deer environment will change with the group of hunters in there.
Just being present.
Yeah,
shakes them a bit.
They obviously, for the reasons that are there, they set schedules. They want you to be there. You have to follow that. And so I had a few reservations, but once you get out there and realize the people you're out there with, they're enjoying it just like you are. Again, the hunting aspect, the management, all the different things you see when you're sitting in a deer stand and that. It was just a really enjoyable, great group of people. The association does a very good job. And again, it relieves some of the pressures, if you will, or whatever, on the Park District. responsibilities and that for just setting that. It's a massive task that I know that Stephen and John and the wildlife group have to put together each year, along with the DNR. It now shares that responsibility.
Yeah, it's a lot. I will attest to this because we have to post like boundary signs so the hunters are aware of where, and it's not just like to the park boundary. There's a buffer there, right? Because we are an urban park system. So there's a buffer system. So we get like lost trying to put these boundaries up to make sure like we're following a line through the thick forest. And again, posting signs so the public is aware of these hunts. So it's been a really good partnership, I think, for the Park District and MBRB.
And I think, so to be part of the MBRB, so they make you do a proficiency test for each year. You have to go through that. And again, it's only ethical shots. So their rules are 20 yards within. And again, fully broadside or slightly quartering away shots. Again, ethical shots we're only looking for in that. So you may have many opportunities, but again, we're just looking. And again, I know that I'm not sure what their percentages are, but again, the group of hunters that are out there, that the shot placements and the percent of kill on those opportunities is very good in that. And they manage that. They take care. They make sure that you follow those guidelines, and it's a very well tight-knit group, if you will. And responsibility, ethics, again, is very important. Is the ultimate part of it.
So is there anything else the two of you would like to share with our listeners in regards to encouraging to become a hunter, or how to get involved, or any last words of wisdom?
Well, two things come to mind for me is, one, I think if you are a hunter who you've been fortunate enough to grow up in it, consider bringing someone along. I think of Bill's situation where he was able to have a friend's father kind of take him under the wing. Wouldn't it be great if we ask our neighbor or our person from school or somebody.
Or work. Or maybe your person from work.
Maybe your person from work, absolutely.
Hint, hint.
So I'd say just, consider taking someone along. And then I think the second thing I would say for the person who's not a hunter who wants to get into it is, yes, there are barriers. That's fair. But I think there's ways we can overcome those. There's organizations out there. I know the DNR is really focused on what they're calling R3, trying to recruit and retain hunters and trying to have more opportunities. I know that there's more mentor opportunities for adults that have come.
Yeah, they're doing a lot of stuff with women in the outdoors too, which I think is fantastic.
It's fantastic. We've done a lot of great things with kids, and I think we should still do that because it's great. But I think we should be reaching out to adults who want to give it a try as well, and to women, of course, too. So I think there are opportunities there. I would say it will take some effort, but there are some programs out there where you could get involved.
Again, it's been a wonderful experience in that. Some of the youth that I've been able to be part of at the camp, again, like Ryan said, it doesn't just end when that weekend's over. I've had opportunities to, we share pictures, stories, emails back and forth with the children and the parents and so forth and that. And it's been a really, really rewarding experience. But I do really agree with Ryan that it's not just the children in this case. There's many adults that maybe feel like it's past. I'm never going to have that opportunity, or I don't know how to make that step to get over that mountain. You spoke of Brandon and that it is. Just reach out to people, and hopefully, again, the experiences are great. This is just a way to expand those experiences that you can have on a daily basis out there when you're in the deer stand or whatever it might be. And so, again, it's been very rewarding, and I look forward to the years ahead as well.
Well, thank you both for sharing your experiences and the importance of hunting. It may not be for everyone, but it does play a vital role in Minnesota's ecology and economy.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us as we travel through the history and biology of white-tailed deer into the delicate balance of management. I realize that this can be an emotional topic. It can be one where people have very strong opinions. And so I hope you enjoyed listening to our perspective on it from a wildlife management perspective. If you disagree with what we said or you have different opinions, send us an email. Let us know. I am more than happy to talk to you about it. We want to get interaction with our listeners. And this is a topic where I think conversation is the best way to address a difference of opinion. So please, wandering naturalist at threeriversparks.org, right on our Facebook page. We are happy to talk to you about this.
Yeah, so deer populations have changed historically since European settlers, and once hunting them was almost purely for survival. But once under management, numbers regained and even grew too large. What is the balance between health of the herd and population sizes to hunter attitudes?
Absolutely. I mean, we've changed the entire northern part of Minnesota, and we have much higher deer populations there than we ever did historically. And so what's that balance between accepting that our habitat has changed, climate is changing, which favors them, and still managing for the other animals that still live up there?
Yeah, and we got to hear from NRM staff Stephen and Sean. There are many things to consider being impacted. The reforestation of our park reserves, minimizing car collisions and disease, along with damage to our neighbors' gardens and landscapes, those hostas that Stephen was mentioning. But also Bill and Ryan reminded us of the importance of hunters and understanding their critical role in the entire process of managing deer, but also how that connects us back to nature and we become better stewards because of it.
So do you want to know how you can learn more or get involved? Check out our website to read more on our park hunts. Visit the Minnesota DNR. They have a wealth of resources available. And don't forget to check out Baker Near Wilderness Settlements and their incredible programs. If you're looking to get involved with MBRB, what does that stand for again,
Metro
Angela?
Bow Hunter Resource Base. I've nailed it.
Visit mbrb.org. And next month, we discuss how different animals survive the winter. So thank you all for listening, and we will see you all next month.
Keep discovering, because the more you learn and are curious about nature, the more fun your wanderings are.
In the meantime, if you have questions or comments for us, if you have ideas for topics you want us to talk about, you can go ahead and email us at wanderingnaturalist@threeriversparks.org. Thank you to the Macaulay Library at Cornell for the natural sounds that we use in our podcast.